podcast, the JCP, Chris's podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm here this week. This is episode 29, and I'm going to kind of just jump right into it because I lost my camera charger. Don't ask me how. I searched the last 30 minutes looking for it, and I started on like 65%. So the goal is to make it through the end of the episode before the camera dies. All right. So we're going to give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. And if not, like the audio will still run. As for the video version, like it's just going to be cut off early and I'll find a way to kind of fill the gap. But if not, just totally ignore that and we're going to get right into it. All right. So I have in the past had episodes where I did tell stories. I had an episode where I talked about my journey as a swimmer, where I started from, where I finished. I talked about going to school in West Virginia and the impact it had on me. And for a while, I've been looking for a way to, introduce this topic to you guys and a way to tie it into, kind of the related content. And I was thinking these past couple of days and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just jump right into it. We're just gonna move forward with it. And I'm gonna tell it how it is. All right. So, if you know me now, you know that I'm really big on mentorship. I love giving guidance to friends and peers around professional and self-development. But, it really hasn't always been this way. I didn't just wake up one day with like this crazy knowledge in my head, like this is how you're supposed to write a resume. These are the questions you're supposed to ask in an interview. This is what you're supposed to look for. I wish it was that simple. Like I wish it was, but I definitely learned it over time, starting at a very young age and through several trials and tribulations of business ventures and lots of reading and research. I would definitely kind of owe it to that. So if you're at a point right now and you're like, I really want to get better with like this thing, like this specific thing with self-development, this specific thing within business, like I want to ace this interview, like it all starts with, the first step and really just diving into it, learning from there. But as we all know, Rome wasn't built in a day. So don't expect you to wake up with like this crazy knowledge, like I said. Now, as for, my entrepreneurial type mindset, I've always been, a go-getter, self-starter, whatever you want to call it. I've always been chasing the bag, if you will. But, it hasn't, I wasn't like, I didn't come out the womb and was like, I'm chasing the bag, I'm going after the bread. Really, like that type of mindset, I would say, didn't come until late elementary school, which I would guess is probably like an early age for kids wanting to start making money. A lot of my friends really wanted to start making money around like 7th, 8th grade. At that point, I'd already been bringing in racks and, it was all a story for another day. But it did start when I was in 5th grade because a friend and I, we were looking for a way to make money. We wanted to be able to afford video games, parts for our skateboards and bikes. We wanted to be able to buy our own snacks at the pool concession stand. And we were just looking for the way to do it. And before a friend and I discussed this, how can we go about this? I had already been working for my cousin's neighbor probably a year and a half at this point. Actually, every day after school, I would go over to the house. I would look after the dogs, feed the dogs, clean up the poop in the backyard. I don't know like how I had the guts to do it every week, but I got paid nice. Like as a 4th grader, 5th grader, making $20 a week, spending 10, 15 minutes a day doing something, it's not bad. So that was the start. And then when it came time for, creating my own business, a friend and I, like I said, we sat down. We're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start up a landscaping business. We're going to get all the houses in the neighborhood. Like everyone's going to want us to cut their grass. And honestly, like I wish it was like that easy. Like I wish the crowd just flocked to us like that. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Like you got to go out and get it. You go and get it regardless, right? So the first step we had after we had brainstormed this idea was hanging flyers around the neighborhood, advertising to cut grass for, a pretty low rate. And the day finally came. I got a phone call because I put my number on the flyer. and I had my first customer. Me and my boy had our first customer. Now, the unfortunate case, like, I hated to do it, but he wasn't available that day to cut grass. So unfortunately, like, I had to move forward. I wasn't gonna hold up a customer. Like, this person should have pretty high grass, right? So I moved forward without him, and the problem that I ran into was I had no prior no prior experience in cutting grass. I had never even used a lawnmower before, never used a weed eater, none of that. So going into it, like, I just expected, like, for just to work out. I don't know why it happened or why I thought it would, but that wasn't the case. All right. Now a pretty influential person stepped into my life at this time, and they had prior experience working in landscaping. They knew what was going on. They knew how to run a lawnmower and a weed eater. And I'm gonna say, like, shout out to you, mom. My mom was there first day cutting grass. She kind of walked me through it all, kind of helped me, guide me to what I was supposed to do, taught me how to, it sounds crazy, but like taught me how to cut grass and like the strategy or like the way about it. Like, you got to do 2 laps around the yard first to get the border, and then you start whipping it up with the stripes. So she was there to teach me how to do that. And then she also taught me how to like fluently communicate with my clients, because, you know, as a 5th grader, you wouldn't expect someone to be able to have like stronger communication skills to, I don't know, like kind of portray or like get a message across to an adult. So again, like, she was there to help me through it. Like, we have to approach it this way. You have to talk to him this way, do it like this. And, you know, really, like, that was the first step. So again, shout out to Mary, shout out to the moms. I appreciate it. You really were like the spark to that fire, like the start of it. But like, as an early age, I did learn how to like fluently communicate with adults, either under like awkward situations, uncomfortable situations. Like, for example, I'm sorry, ma'am, but I kind of cut a 10-foot long patch in your yard that's down to the grass. I'm not saying that I did that, but like, you got to be able to own up to it. And I learned to own up to it at a very young age. Really, like, yeah, definitely from a very young age. And as I gathered more clients at that around that age, it only got better. I only improved on them. But, you know, the goal of starting this landscaping business with my friend, who had unfortunately been unavailable that Saturday morning, was we wanted to buy bike parts, skateboard parts, food, our own snacks, all of that, video games. And then I was ready to like move forward with a new console. I'd always grown up playing the PlayStation 2. All of my friends had the 360, and I wanted the 360. Actually, I wanted the 360 Elite, the black one with the most memory. And the only way to do this was save up by cutting grass. And actually, my first summer doing it, I earned, I think, $600 or $700 going into 6th grade. And like I said, like, I charged very, very low, like $15, $15 per yard, super easy. But, you know, all summer paid off. It came time where I had the money to do it, because I was taught how to correctly budget my money to still have spending money. And then I was also taught the importance of patience and savings. Because again, Rome wasn't built in a day. My bank account wouldn't hit 700 in a day. You kind of have to let it build and be patient throughout the process. Now, one of the things that really did help this savings and patience process was my parents told me I was not allowed to touch any of the money until a specific day when the summer ended. And, you know, when that day came, I'd be able to buy the new Xbox. I'd be able to buy a new TV. I'd be set up and squared away. And, you know, in the end, I got to that point, and it was like the best feeling in the world. Like, after you'd worked all this time for something and you're finally rewarded. Great feeling at a super young age. But, you know, I didn't just do it one summer. I wanted to expand my business. I wanted to continue to grow it. However, my friend, he wasn't really interested in following through with it. RIP. um, but I wanted to move forward with it. Starting my first summer, I had I had an electric blower, an electric lawnmower, and then a shitty weed eater. And we made it last throughout the summer. We made it work. We had to have an extension cord everywhere we go. And when you get to the end of the row, you got to whip it over. Pain in the ass. Don't ever go to an electric mower with an extension cord. But come that second summer, I was ready to start upgrading my equipment, which meant I had to get rid of that shitty electric lawnmower. And I did just that. Actually, one of my neighbors had an old lawnmower sitting on the curb that definitely didn't work. It had obvious problems, which was, the reason that they were throwing it out. But I knew that I'd be able to get it fixed because we have a ton of people around the neighborhood that do small engine work, advertisements all over the place. So again, I had to learn how to communicate a problem to an adult and then work through and find a resolution and then follow through with the commitments of paying. So a lot of these lessons that people learn, later, I learned super young. I learned 6th grade how to keep up with payments, how to diagnose a problem and then communicate that to someone and then get a response back. It worked out. So that was like the first addition to the landscaping business. To Carter's Lawn Care is actually the name of the business. Still alive today. Shout out. Got that mower and it ran like a dream. It was probably like the best feeling in the world. I had a new mower. It worked and the business began to grow. So what started as 1 or 2 streets my first summer, then extended or expanded to other streets throughout the neighborhood. And the time came where I knew I had to, find a way to get my equipment across the neighborhood, like in a fast and easy way. So my first real investment for the business was a cargo rack to carry on the trailer hitch of my dad's Jeep. And again, when I got that, I was so stoked. It was such a great feeling, knowing that, I finally had my own stuff. This was my stuff with my name on it. And it felt great. Though I wasn't allowed to drive at that time. So I couldn't say my name was on the Jeep or anything. We found a way to work through it, but I did learn to drive at a very early age. Actually, I wouldn't even say an early age. When I learned to drive, this was far before I got my permit, and I was finally given access to drive throughout the neighborhood when it came to business only. So I had to go cut grass across the neighborhood. I could take the Jeep, but it has to be business related. And, we continued to do that. And I continued to grow more yards, which started as 1 to 2, then grew 5 to 10. And soon the opportunity cost to cut a bigger yard began to decrease as I spent more time using a push mower. You can only move so quick with a push mower. You can only get so much done. And I knew that I needed to find something new. I needed a way to efficiently get through large yards while saving time, yet still making money, and not paying people. So really the next step came the following summer when my goal of owning my own lawn tractor finally came true. Something I'd always dreamt of, wanted my own lawnmower. And it happened. I was in the market for it. I found one on Craigslist for $300, 38-inch deck, Craftsman. Thing ran like a dream. RIP. Pour one out for the homies because the Craftsman is long gone at this point. But another important lesson came when I went to go purchase the lawnmower. I went out with my dad, and what the guy had advertised was $300 on Craigslist. So I came out, $300 plus whatever in cash. I was ready to pay for it. And going into it, I had never negotiated anything before. I thought in my head, oh, I got this down. I can do this. That wasn't the case. The guy and I are talking. I test out the lawnmower. It, runs great. And then it's time to sit down and talk prices. Time to talk money. And he said, "How's 300?" Just like the initial price offering. And I said, "Okay, let's do it." And I said, "Okay, let's do it." We shook hands. And I was like, "What about 250?" And that's when my dad stepped in. He's like, "No, no, no. Like that that's not how you negotiate. You don't agree on one price and then try to, you don't shake on it and try to get them to go lower." And that was a pretty important lesson because it paid off in the future when I did have to negotiate other things when it came to the landscaping equipment, such as prices for yards. A great example right there. Um, so learning to negotiate came with getting my first riding lawnmower. Now, how was I going to get this lawnmower throughout the neighborhood with my push mower, my weed eaters, all of that? We didn't have a trailer for the Jeep, so what I did do, again, on Craigslist, I found a garden trailer that attached to the hitch of the lawnmower, and I was able to carry around all of my stuff to houses. It was like a little 3x3 lawn trailer, whatever, real flimsy metal, but it got the job done. It did the trick. And I did lose time not driving the Jeep to yards, but really, like, I didn't care. I had my own lawnmower that I put my own front license plate on. Like, I spray painted a stripe down the front with Plasti Dip. Like, that thing was sweet. And owning this and having more control of my business was like all that mattered to me. And it was great. And then the day came when the Craftsman bit the dust. It was a sad day because it's like watching your first pet pass away. Um, if I could compare it to anything, like, I had loved this lawnmower, I had named it, like, I'd customized it. The thing was sweet, and it didn't quite make it through the second summer. So I had to finish off this summer with the push mower and back to the Jeep. I had to take a step back in order to I'd take two steps back in order to take one step forward, which came the following spring. I had worked throughout the winter as a pool manager, and I cleaned the neighborhood pool as well as like 3 or 4 other pools around my city. And I had saved up just enough money to get my dream, a John Deere riding mower. More specifically, a John Deere LT 155 Freedom Deck mower. Yeah, hell yeah. It was, oh my God, it was like I can't even like find the words to describe it, but it was the best feeling ever, like finally getting something that I'd always dreamed of, finally having my own John Deere mower. And, I'd love that thing. Because like I said, like a life goal of mine to own this, and I had it. I had it in my hands. I could ride it. You know what I'm saying? Um, but after I got that, I found that my little lawn trailer, little garden trailer, was not sufficient enough to, continue to get all of my equipment around because I had upgraded push mowers, upgraded weed eaters, still had the electric blower, but I needed something larger. So what started with a 3x3 garden trailer that I got for like $50, 40 or $50 off Craigslist, I purchased a 5x7 pull behind cart from Tractor Supply. And again, a great feeling knowing that saved up money to purchase an investment which would, pay itself off within weeks. And it did just that. And it was big enough where I could fit 2 push mowers, 2 weed eaters, my blower, and then when I would hire people to come help me with yards on summer days, like say I had like 5 or 6 yards in a day, pay a friend, and it was actually big enough where they could fit in the trailer too. So we're just rolling through the neighborhood. I'm driving the mower, and then they're riding behind on the back. It was definitely like a sight to see. Um, but again, like best feeling, I got my own stuff. I'm again in control of my business with better equipment, and day came. Um, the day came where it was now time that I was the day came where I was now beginning to get requests to cut yards outside of my neighborhood. My neighborhood is probably like at least 1,000 houses, so I definitely thought I had like an ample supply of yards to cut. But when people outside of that began coming up to me like, "Hey, can you cut this yard? Can you cut this yard? Like this yard's pretty big. I want you to cut my yard." you know. And then I had to make the next big step in Carter's Lawn Care. Again, saved up money from cutting grass that summer, working at the pool all year. Come spring the following year, I had just enough money to buy a trailer for the Jeep, cargo trailer for the Jeep. And I thought I was, the shit, king of the world. I now have a trailer to hold all of my equipment. Like I was not shy in the storage department whatsoever. Just enough room for everything. So I got that, and then I began to cut yards outside the neighborhood, much larger yards than what I was used to in my neighborhood, because, majority of the yards you could knock out with a push mower, some with a riding mower, but the yards that I was moving up to, you couldn't do with just a push mower. Like you got to have more. And I made that jump. I took the risk to do that, and it would pay off. I had my license at this point, so I was driving the Jeep to all the yards, or I was driving my car to all the yards. But again, I was growing. What started as 1 to 2 yards, jumped to 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, and I'm outside the neighborhood cutting grass. Now, I would really say like the way that my business, or like trying to think of the word, like a catalyst. No, I don't know if catalyst is the right word, but something that really like jump started my marketing. What began was just flyers around the neighborhood, which my tactic was put up as many as you can so the most people can see them, and it worked. But it was time to grow out of that phase and time to step into the phase of business cards. At 10th grade, I had my own business cards, and probably one of the best things I could have ever done for the business. Once I got the business cards, it then began to be much, much easier to get meet and get new clients, because rather than going up to someone and saying, "Oh, here's my number, take it down, blah, blah, blah," I can pull up with my Jeep, whatever, pull up with the truck, get out, introduce myself, and then hand them my business card, and then just drive away. And they have nothing but all of my contact information. I think I purchased probably like 1,000, 1,500 business cards. And like, even to this day, like if I were to just like look around my office, I can probably find like 50 in here. I got another like 100 in my Jeep, and then a ton in my closet. Red, white, and blue business cards, all my contact information. Like, it couldn't have been better than that. Like, you can't beat a business card like that. And it paid off. It definitely paid off. And tragedy struck when the John Deere had bit the dust. Definitely a sad day. It was worse than the day the Craftsman died, because this was my dream. I'm just watching it flush down the drain. And it was 1 yard that I'd mowed this one Saturday afternoon. I got asked to do it last minute because the people who had planned to do it ended up not showing up. And I was like, you know what, whatever. Like, I'll knock out this yard. Like, I can ride the whole yard and be done with it. I just did that. However, this was the yard that was, the straw that broke the camel's back. Is that how you? I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Like, this yard was like the thing that kind of sent the John Deere over the edge. Now, with such tall grass, you really don't look at, the ground before. You can't see all the holes and ditches, all the bumps in the yard. And I wish I would have, because, finished cutting the front yard, and the backyard is filled with holes, thick grass, deep ditches. And I didn't notice this until I got home and I was unloading the trailer. But all of the bolts to my engine of the John Deere had completely unattached from the frame. So if I wanted to, I could lift up the hood of the mower and just kick off my engine. It wasn't attached anywhere. And this was a pretty big hit for me for the business because I'm now out of a riding lawnmower. I got to find a way to still cut these yards. And fortunately, I had a friend who did landscaping across town. He was able to help me out with a ton until the next big step came. Now, at this point, this is my freshman summer going into sophomore year, and the John Deere was no more. After a couple years, you just couldn't take it anymore. We had to put him down. Wiping my face with a tear right now. But, this next big step came by the help of my parents. So outside of my mom and dad helping me here and there with knocking stuff out with yards, helping me get through them when I was overloaded with things to do, they decided to help me out with a pretty large investment that would soon pay itself off. So with the money that I continuously spent on fixing the John Deere, I could have easily upgraded to a brand new mower. And that's exactly what we did. It was actually, we were on vacation and my parents introduced the idea to me, and I was shook because a couple days before, my mom and I were at Tractor Supply getting dog food. Just so happened to take a look at a couple Cub Cadets, just looking, like this wasn't in my budget at all. But, they proposed the idea to me and they said, like, you can make so much more money, or you can utilize your money more buying something brand new as opposed to polishing off a turd. And it happened. The day came, I had my own 42-inch Cub Cadet with mulching blades, and it drove like an absolute. It still does drive like an absolute dream. I've had it for 4 years now. I still use it every single week. My God, if this could be my primary car, like my primary car would be a 42-inch Cub Cadet with mulching blades. I sure love that thing. But they told me, like I said, while I was on vacation, and just being so bummed out about losing my dream lawnmower of a John Deere, it really turned everything around. Definitely turned things around, and I was able to continue to move forward with the growth of my business. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating this to like show growth and progression. At the peak of my business, at the peak of Carter's Landscaping when I was in college, I was cutting grass every single day. I was cutting 3 to 4 yards a day, sometimes as many as 6 to 7 yards a day. And I had probably like between 35 and 45 accounts that I did weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. It all just depended on what they wanted. Now with landscaping, with cutting grass, the supply and the demand is very cyclical. So I would get home from school in the spring and I would begin to gain momentum with picking up more yards. And then as summer began to wrap up and I began, packing up for school, my dad and I would sit down and, walk through each account and decide whether or not he wanted to continue cutting them after I leave for school. Now, my dad works full-time, 40 hours a week as a teacher. And, it's not so much like in the schedule to cut 4 to 5 yards after working all day. So we drastically cut down the amount of yards. Typically, it was to like the early accounts that I'd had, the accounts that I'd had throughout my entire business that I started with when I was young. So he would keep those ones just to maintain the loyalty. And then it would repeat again the following spring. I'd get home. I would do a ton of marketing to the neighborhood, outside the neighborhood, to pick up more yards. Again, it picked up and then dropped back off in the fall. But it all worked out. Like, it worked out. My dad got paid. I got paid. I was steady gaining new accounts every year. And as each year went by, came a new investment to the landscaping business. Every year I upgraded something, got something new, improved something. And, what started as just the lawnmower off the curb grew into a few $1,000s worth of equipment over a few years. And as much as I would have loved to quit at times of cutting grass, because it sucks sometimes. Like I'm gonna tell you, like if you're out in the heat, the bugs, it definitely sucks. And you wake up some days, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to spend my entire day outside cutting grass. But I can say that, it truly taught me a valuable lesson, and it, to this day continues to teach me a lesson. By far, it's always been this way. Cutting grass is my favorite pastime. But again, on days where it's 100 degrees out, sunny as hell, there's humidity, and then a million bugs, it often made me reconsider what I was doing. Is this really something I want to continue to follow through with? Like, do I want to do this next year? And every year, I'd be like, I'm not doing this next year. Like, I'm done after this year. But the same thing continues to bring me back every single year. The love of my 42-inch Cub Cadet with the Malter blades. Like, again, it truly cuts like a dream. Best thing ever. But I would say, owning and operating a business since elementary school was incredibly challenging. I had to, learn so many things. I had to learn how to grow with my business. I had to learn how to correctly market it to the right people. Extremely challenging. But it was such an incredibly rewarding experience. And if it weren't for the landscaping business, I would have never been exposed to the situations that, I've been through if it weren't for cutting grass. Like, I've dealt with crazy clients. I've dealt with snakes cutting grass. What else? Breaking lawnmowers, breaking weed eaters throughout the day. Like, the worst that you can imagine that happens when landscaping, like, I'm gonna say, like, I've been through it all. But one of the huge benefits of continuing to run my business is that it has funded so many great things in my life to this day. Actually, I cut grass last weekend, and it's funding my trip to West Virginia this weekend. It's funded a ton of things, like I said, like trips. It's funded trips across the country. It's funded additions for my room, for my car. It actually paid for my very first car. I bought my first car off landscaping money. So, it's always going to be there. Like, grass is always going to grow. There's always going to be a demand for people to cut your grass. And, if you got the passion for it, like, you can follow through with it. But, outside of my parents, I definitely had a couple positive influences on my business. I had people who were experienced in the landscaping industry that had given me tips and pointers here and there. I'd reached out to a friend. I'm like, hey, what would you charge for this yard? And the grass is yay high. So, be able to help me out there. And then I had one friend, like I said, that ran a landscaping business across town. Truly, I think he helped shape me into, part of some of the businessman that I am today, because his work ethic was great. He had an incredible work ethic, and he focused very heavily on perfection, which, something that I focus on as well when it comes to the yards. Like, I'm not gonna leave a yard with grass in the driveway. Like, I'm not gonna leave the yard with grass sitting in the crack between the driveway and the yard. Like, just don't do that. So I was taught perfection from this friend, and the way that he communicated with his clients as well. He would come up to me after we'd finished cutting grass together. He'd be like, yeah, I talked to him about this and that. Next time, like, you should mention this, or you should propose this to him. And, though we don't really keep in touch anymore, I would definitely say, like, to this day, this person made an incredible impact on my business. And, quite frankly, like who I am today. It's been a crazy journey, and since graduating from college, or actually probably since definitely before that, since like my junior year, where I had my first summer internship in Colorado, I began to kind of tone it down with landscaping, as I was out of the state for the entire summer, so we had to find a way to still maintain those yards while I wasn't home. I've since then began to slowly cut down on the yards that I do, and I have a strong like 4 to 5 yards that I do, weekly, bi-weekly, all of that. And though the business like still isn't as booming as it was, it definitely has like the potential to get back to that. But, it is what it is with the business. I'm growing up, so maybe one day like it's going to be time to, just at least until I get my own house. Hang up the Cub Cadet keys and, take a little break, which I'm not looking forward to the day where I won't be able to cut grass. I don't know. The dream goal, like the goal here, is to be able to have a huge yard, mow it every single day while my dog sits on my wraparound porch and watches me. Like, tell me that's not the dream. Like, I cannot think of anything better than that right there. So, extremely long-winded. My camera is actually about to die. Like, incredible timing that we have right now. But I wanted to come today with that story time. I do have plenty more things in store for the future. I have a ton more ideas on things that I want to talk about. But until then, you're just gonna have to be content with this episode, which I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the story of how I grew to be a landscaping god around my neighborhood, I guess you could say. Like, I kind of ran the shits, not really, but through determination and perseverance, like, I grew my business into something that I would call successful to this day. So, you like listening to that, check me out on iTunes, Spotify, rate and review the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, shout out to you. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. But that's what I have for this week's episode of Just Chris Podcast Landscaping Edition. I will talk to all of you hopefully next week, the following week. I have close coming up this week. So the following week, we will have a new episode out, new video out, and we'll go from there. So episode 30, big deal, everyone. Thanks for listening, and talk to all of you